When I was about 12, I was at my cousin's house. He was about 9, ducking around on their trampoline. This was an older neighborhood, kind of dilapidated. My cousin and I get the bright idea to sneak into the old abandoned house on the other side of his fence. So we climbed the fence, walk the narrow path between his fence and the side of the old house. We were barefoot, what the duck, and go around to the front of the house. The front door was actually modern, a steel door with a lock on it. We tried it, and it opened. We went inside and the smell hit us like a wall. This sweet, sickly smell filled the whole house, so we held our noses as we walked through. There was no glass on the floor, which was fortunate for our aforementioned bare feet, but there was a lot of dust. It was a shotgun house with maybe 4 small rooms that we could tell, and in the front room there were like 6 or 7 mountain bikes. We figured someone was just storing things here. The bathroom was off this room, and it had a bunch of small, old glass bottles that looked like they dated back to the 1940s or thereabouts. The second room, past the first, had a bunch of old junk in it, but the thing that sticks out in my mind was an old cassette player with a cassette still in it. On the label the cassette said Deborah, March 18, 1993. We didn't really care about this. The third room had more bikes and more junk, and it had a tiny closet off to the side. We wrestled the cobwebs away and saw nothing other than a fucking chainsaw with red-brown residue on it. Alarm bells were going off in our heads now, and even though we tried to rationalize it as just rust, we decided to quickly see what was in the fourth room and then GTFO. We walked into the fourth room and saw that it was completely empty, except for some stairs to the basement, lots of dust, and a small wooden cross. Painted on it were these words, Deborah, September 29, 1963, March 18, 1993. Then we heard a thump from the basement. We walked into the fourth room and saw that it was completely empty, except for some stairs to the basement, lots of dust, and a small wooden cross. Painted on it were these words, Deborah, September 29, 1963, March 18, 1993. Then we heard a thump from the basement. I went back to my cousin's house a few days later. It aroused no suspicion from our parents since he lived a few blocks away and played together all the time. I brought my little sister with to play with my cousin's younger siblings. My sister was 9 just like my cousin, but I wouldn't dream of telling her. She was a huge blab, and my cousin and I had decided that we didn't want anyone to know yet. Especially not the adults. As for my cousin, we'll call him Connor from now on. He didn't know I was coming, but he was glad I did, because he had done some research on the house. He told me that in the first owners, an elderly couple who had built the house around the turn of the century, had moved out and never sold the house. They left it to their son when they died, and their son left it to his son. But nobody had ever lived in it since the first owners moved out, so it had been empty since about 1948. Confirming my guess about the age of the glass bottles in the bathroom windowsill. The house had just been used to store things ever since. We had already planned for our second visit. We had shoes this time, and we each brought a flashlight. Both of us had our own pistols, handguns, rifles, etc., but we didn't dare try to sneak them out of the house, so we each brandished our pocket knives, freshly sharpened for the occasion. We skidded along the path between the old house and the back of his fence. It wasn't a path, really. It was a space about 5 to 6 feet wide, covered in twigs and leaves and those awful sticker plants. All of this was brown, which was probably why we didn't see the ball of twine on our last adventure. It was nestled against the side of the old house under a pile of leaves. It was about the size of an adult's fist, and it was brown, as twine usually is. It looked old, and it was rather heavy. I pocketed it and we moved on. We crept around to the front of the house and quickly slipped inside. We didn't want to linger on the off chance that someone might see us. It was, after all, broad daylight. In the house nothing had changed. It was exactly as we had left it. I did pocket the cassette, as one of you was hoping. The bikes were all still there. So were the chainsaw and the old glass bottles. It appeared that nobody had been in or out since we left. No one probably had, it had only been a few days. We went straight to the last room after poking around a bit in the other 3 and finding nothing of interest. The cross was still there. After standing around a bit, listening for any thumps, we mustered up all the courage we had and decided to go down to the basement. I know what you're thinking, how cliché. But after creeping down the stairs and around the corner, knives brandished and ready, we found a nothing. There were a few piles of leaves here and there, an old empty pop can, and other assorted trash. But otherwise nothing. No sign of anything amiss. So we went back upstairs, dismissing the thump we heard a few days before as just the house settling or falling apart, considering how old it was, and left. But instead of going back, we decided to check out the other side of the house. I really wish we hadn't. There was a pair of old storm doors that we hadn't seen from the basement. The paint, if there ever had been any, had completely chipped off, and so now the doors were grey. They were nailed shut, so we ran back. Neither of us wanted to be left behind to grab a hammer from his dad's toolbox. We went to work on those doors, but there had to have been hundreds of nails there, just nailed and crooked and all over the place. It was getting darker by now, so we said duck that and went home. Next day I came over again and work continued. We had the doors open about halfway by now, and we could see the cellar underneath. Neither of us could fit through the space, though, so we kept pulling the nails. It was about 3 in the afternoon by the time we had finished, and when we got the doors open we found no stairs and a drop of about 10 feet. We peered into it as far as we could without falling in. It smelled so bad. We were sure it was the source of the smell in the old house. It was pretty tiny, as far as we could tell. It was narrow, and there was a large wall right in the center of it, with narrow paths along both sides, leading into the dark. The floor was stained, and we both knew it was blood. Maybe our kid imaginations were going wild, though. Who knows? But one thing I do know is that sound will haunt me forever. The sound on the cassette. We played it that day, on his cassette player. It was static for about 5 minutes, and we were ready to give up. Then a scream. An awful, tortured scream. The screams continued until they were suddenly ended, right in the middle of one. Then static again.